Victor Miller, who was the writer, we're outside on the porch for a couple of days trying to figure out how would we do this. Well, what if you had a machete? What if, and then, okay, but if you shot this way, where the camera would be? And then if you shot, then if you came back the other way, how could we make it work? And by the way, how's it going to make it look like a head came off? And Tom had this notion of putting on the shoulder harness, and then we would have blood coming out the top of that. By anything like today's standards, it was really, really primitive. It was sort of like an elementary school magic trick, but nobody had ever seen it before, so that what we wound up with was people were completely off guard when it happened, and they weren't trying to deconstruct it. It was like, holy cow. And none of that. That was that, plus the other thing that was a wonderful idea was Tom's idea of the arrow through the neck with Kevin Bacon. And again, it was a fairly simple gag, but it had to do with the misdirection and where are you expecting something to come from, and then it came from someplace else. And again, since you'd never seen it before, you weren't prepared for it. And I think one of the really big bonuses of chopping the head off was that when we put Adrienne in the lake in the next scene, it was all quiet and beautiful, and the movie was over. We'd established who the killer was, fought the killer to the death. Killer's dead. Okay, so we're going to roll in titles, I guess. But gosh, it's pretty. And it's the first time the lights have been on forever in the movie. And you see, one of my favorites, you see the cops running across the shore of the phone. And so you know that the police are there and everything's going to be fine. And that really was one of the key ingredients to selling the surprise of Jason coming out of the lake. And the other thing that I think is often underrated was Harry Manfredini's contribution to that, because we did it in such a way, and it was a beautiful little piece of music, and again, it did everything to reinforce the misdirection, as it were. But if you listen, that he doesn't come out of the lake on a hit. He comes out at the wrong time musically. So again, just when you were expecting to go to one place musically, this whole other thing happened. And it was one of those things that just finally came together. And I had to tell Noel's mother at the end that, yeah, she was right, he probably would have frozen to death. I mean, because...
It was, I remember sitting, like I said, we didn't have the honey wagon, we had the little cafeteria at the campsite, right? But we had a warming tray in there, so while they were all out freezing their butts before the sun was rising at dawn, I was sitting in there warming my butt on the warming tray, listening to the radio, and I swear the guy goes, "Good morning," blares down. It's 28 degrees outside. I swear I remember that. It's in my diary. I didn't make it up. It was cold.
It was cold, no doubt.
All right. You know, before the sun rises, it could have been 28 degrees.
Do you, by the way, to answer your question, were you referring to the head chopping off of
the jump out? That's what I was talking about.
Of the
lake?
scare,
yeah, Laurie jumping out. Yeah.
I don't know quite how that evolved. What happened was, we had the scene was scheduled to end chopping Betsy Palmer's head off. And we wanted to say, isn't there some kind of an extra thing? What can we do extra? And I had some people that were putting up money, and they had said, "Yeah, you're right, that's a great idea. You know, but he shouldn't just be a kid coming out of the lake. He should be all twisted and mongoloid." And I said, "Oh God, that's just that's just so wrong." And I was like, it's going to be hard enough anyway, and that would be great. And I said, all right, well, we can. And then I talked to Steve, and we talked to Tom, and it became like the head chopping off. It's like, okay, but how would we do it? And my concern, and this was simultaneous, was I absolutely was convinced that you couldn't end the movie that way. It was like, you know, ending the movie with punching somebody in the stomach. You can't do that. I said, of course you can. I said, no, there's something wrong with that. And so, while Tom was trying to figure out how to get this makeup to work actually underwater and try to figure out a gag that he could come up from the right end. While we were doing that, I was going crazy trying to figure out what scene could possibly follow this. And out of that came, right now, I don't know how long the scene was, very short, but she's in the hospital, and you realize, oh, she survived, and what happened, and she talks about the boy. And then you cut to the lake, and it's just having that scene, it gave you sort of like, oh, okay. And if you just stopped it when he came out of the lake, it wouldn't have had nearly the same effect. Most people don't remember that there even was a scene after that, you know. But that was the scene that said, okay, roll this back in balance with some minor adjustments, and those were they. I can't give Tom Savini enough credit for all the different things he did on that movie. Tom is now sort of like he's an elder statesman, you know, of this. This is crazy Tom Savini from Pittsburgh who shows up one day at my house with his friend Tasso and a chinchilla, a little pet chinchilla, as I recall. And he had this car full of stuff, and it was all this sort of strange cooking apparatus and God knows. And he just had the most enthusiasm for just doing this thing. And, you know, at that time, Tom was, he probably thought the way we did is that what we're doing is a magic trick. And the whole process is to do a magic trick. There's misdirection and then expectations, and then you go the other way and try to see if it works. And then the audience has a sense of delight that comes from being gently tricked. And that was contagious, and we all drank from that cup. That was, and I'm not, just to be completely clear, Tom was, and still is, completely crazy.
Because I'm doing his biography right now, and he still has all the stuff from the movie in his house, everything in the background. He's like, this is from this movie. I'm like, oh my God. So it's really cool.
And Ari became Captain Morgan.
Yes, he did. All right, next question out here. Yes.
This is for Kane. What was your favorite murder scene and why?
I think the favorite kill that I did as Jason will always be the sleeping bag for me. Just because I killed somebody with something that wasn't a weapon. And it was kind of a shock. You see me drag the girl out. We put the makeup effects girl in the sleeping bag first while I'm dragging it so she can be kicking around so you can tell there's somebody in there. And then, of course, I pick it up with the dummy and slam it against a tree. And at the time, it was a big shock. And I went to the theater, to the Chinese theater in Hollywood when the movie opened on Friday the 13th of May, 1988. And I just sat in the back of the theater just as a paying customer and just watched everybody stand up and scream and high-five on that kill. So it was pretty exciting. I like all the kills, but that's my favorite.
Did you not hit it a lot more times than that, and then you cut it down to one?
I did, yes. I hit it against the tree. Some people say 5, Beekler says 7 for some reason, but I kept slamming it against the tree, and I was getting pissed off because it was hard to hold. It was a 90-pound dummy in the bag, a nylon sleeping bag. I have foam latex prosthetic hands on, so I can't grip anything. And I was getting so frustrated that I didn't look powerful enough, and I was losing my balance, and so I just kept swinging and swinging and swinging, and then they ended up just using it once. I think that kind of worked anyway.
More powerful. Next question.
She actually had part of my question, but what I wanted to say was my favorite kill probably was in part 4 with Crispin Glover, the corkscrew. Where in the hell's the corkscrew? And Jason's like, and but I wanted to get everybody else's, the whole panel, even down to Sean, Mr. Cunningham. What was y'all's favorite kills throughout the franchise?
Take it away.
Well, I didn't have many kills to choose from. So I think I was most delighted with the Betsy Palmer thing because it was just kind of cool. Another one that we tried. Well, I want to say something about Kane in the sleeping bag. Many years later, we were doing part 10, which is in space, and we got all these different things in space that you could do. It'd be terrific. Finally, we come down to the scene where we create artificial Crystal Lake, and then we make up a scene, and we come up with, you got to get some naked campers in the woods and kill them in the sleeping bag, which we did again, and the audience just came. That was the showstopper, and the second time around, it was still the showstopper, and it was done in a sort of a pixelated video way, but it was really.
And during that scene, I take one girl in a sleeping bag, slam her against her friend who's in her sleeping bag a couple times.
Yeah.
And then I told Jim Isaac, who directed the film, that I was going to do one last thing at the end, just kind of an ad-lib thing. So just have the camera follow me, and that's when I boom, boom a couple times, and then took her and slammed her against a tree for old time's sake. And unfortunately, Jim Isaac passed away recently, but he directed, I guess he's considered the director of the horror show, right? I did many movies with Sean, mostly as a stunt coordinator, and we did one called The Horror Show with Brian James, who also has passed away, and Lance Henriksen. And I was just telling this story earlier. It's an interesting story because it's a stunt story, but Lance Henriksen, sometimes when he does panels, he tells a story about doing a movie, he and I doing a movie together, and he always tells a story. He says, yeah, I did a scene with Kane, and the entire scene, Kane was looking me right in the eyes. And everybody's like, yeah, so? Is that a big deal? And he waits for it, and he says, Kane was on fire at the time. I was doubling Brian James. I was completely on fire, and I was still acting with him, right in his eyes. So, kind of a cool story, but...
Other favorite kills on the panel?
I don't have a favorite kill. I'm in trouble. The sleeping bag, I think that's the best one of the whole series. We had a lot of mileage on that.
I really don't have a favorite kill because all of them seem to kind of melt together as we were making the movie. In fact, I don't even remember the corkscrew thing.
The corkscrew and the meat cleaver. The meat cleaver to the face. The corkscrew and the meat cleaver
to the face.
Well, the meat cleaver through the face, well, that was kind of enjoyable. Yeah, that was pretty clever. Tom Savini, the makeup guy, made the machete with the cutout on it and everything, so it looked a lot worse than what it really was.
Yeah.
And it didn't require any skill on my part. I mean, it was anybody here in the audience could do it. So yeah, that wasn't too bad. I can't come up with another one that I thought was delicious. Anybody else can think of one?
I can. I like Frozen Head from Jason X.
Yeah.
Frozen girl's head with liquid nitrogen smashed it on the table. And then I did a bunch of motherfuckers' head off.
And he still brings those to conventions, the head.
Yes, that's right.
Have you seen him?
Yeah, it's a flare.